Hello and welcome to the Confetti Homily. This is the homily that I designed to explain how Christ tramples death by his own death. But in order for it to make sense, we have to back up a little bit. So, God created each of us to be like him. And when we look at God, and how he's often described in Scripture is being light, being alive, being full of this energy, constantly radiating outward. And he created us to be like himself so that we would constantly be reflecting his light, be full of his energy, to be like him, shiny and radiating. And the best thing that I could figure out of how to represent ourselves is sparkly confetti. Now, sparkly confetti looks beautiful. Maybe I'll hold some up. It reflects the light, and also it's quite festive and happy as long as it's in the air. When there's lots of confetti in the air, it's a party. But then it quickly falls down to the ground. Well, unlike God, we take our energy and sometimes put it into ourselves. God is always floating and flying and sparkling and dancing in the air, but we tend to be lazy, tend to do things for ourselves and say, you know what, I feel like dropping. And that's not very full of life. Once the confetti hits the table, it's got no purpose, no joy in it. It doesn't shine anymore like it's supposed to shine. It's just dead. Good for no one except maybe, 3-year-olds who don't mind picking it up. And so we have to sweep up those who have fallen to the ground and died, and we ended up burying them. So we sweep them up. They're in the thing, and they end up somehow in a vacuum cleaner bag or a garbage bag. In this case, it works best if I illustrate with a balloon. So here we are, dead people, no longer shining, no longer full of life, end up in death. Inside death, there's nothing beautiful about them. They have no purpose. They have no life. Death has consumed them, and they're useless. But the good news is the next generation comes and the party continues. And then those get swept up as well. And then the next generation comes and the party continues. Oh, and they get swept up. Adding into death's collection and not serving God at all. For the brief few minutes that they were alive, everything was beautiful and good. But they too end up being part of death. Well, Jesus thought, this isn't right. I created humanity so that they can dance, so that they can be fully alive, so that they can have life. I don't want them just to die and be held by death. So the way he decided to save us was to become a sparkly confetti himself. So here is perfectly human in every way, Jesus, just like the rest of us. A shiny piece of confetti. And as he comes into the world, he joins those who are there. And he doesn't fall. He doesn't go to the ground. He doesn't end up on the ground because he doesn't do things for himself. He's not lazy and just falls with gravity. He rather tries to stir up those who are falling and encourage them to rise, and encourage them to have more life, and encourage them to shine more. In fact, Jesus is so sparkly and beautiful that those around him look at him and say, "Man, you're making us look bad." So they decide that they're going to take Jesus and drag him down to the ground with them. And so he, like the rest, ends up on the table. And like the rest, he too gets swept up into the grave, where he too, like the rest of us, enters into death. And so we have Jesus in the grave. But Jesus being in the grave doesn't sit still. He doesn't start sinning. He doesn't have any sin in him. So there is nothing that holds him to death. He was nailed to the cross. He had to enter into death. But nothing holds him in death. And so Jesus, like in life, starts encouraging those around him. He starts shining upon those around them, which imparts his energy in this dance, in this movement. And you know what that does? Well, there's not much space for energy and movement inside here, but Jesus' energy and movement expands things a little. And now they start shaking a little bit. And Jesus is bumping into them and saying, "Hey, we're not supposed to be dead. We weren't created for death." And so there's more movement and more energy. Death starts to realize that it's being stretched. It's starting to worry that, this piece of confetti that it's swallowed is not just any piece of confetti. It's totally human, but it's also God himself, the source of life. And as it realizes, Jesus continues giving life to all those who have died, all the generations before us. And so it expands even more. And it expands even more, because all generations receive again the life and the light of God. Until all the generations once again come back to life and are full of energy and goodness again. Christ our God has trampled death. By entering into death, he has freed all of us. Now the reality is we still have the mouth of death. That which held us has blown up. There's nothing left of it other than little pieces all over my floor. But when we die, new confetti still enters into the mouth of death and dies. We realize that we die, but there is nothing holding us anymore. We are once again shiny and beautiful. And that's how I normally explain how Christ enters into death and conquers death by his own death. In no way has he sinned, therefore he has not become death. He rather enters into death and is the life and the light. Thank you. This is Father Bo for Theosis Studios. I hope you enjoyed this homily.